My motivation and drive was I grew up poor. I grew up with a great family, don't get me wrong, but we didn't have a lot of means. If I wanted anything, I had to go work for it. So I did. You know, I've been working a long time. My first job, I was at a liquor store counting cans in Detroit, Michigan. Lincoln Park, Michigan, which is basically Detroit, Michigan. I was very young. I wasn't even allowed to work. They paid me $3 an hour under the table to work. So I did. I rode my bike. That was my first job. I walked in. I tell the story that I think I was 10, but I was probably 11 or 12. I wasn't more than 12, because at 12 you could get different permits. At 12 you could get a permit to do a few hours work here. At 14 you can get a permit to actually work at a restaurant when I was, you know, in the 80s and 90s. It wasn't like I was working 40 hours a week. I'd work like 3-hour shifts after school a couple days a week and then on the weekends. I didn't do it long because it was disgusting. So I didn't do that long. And then I've always had a job. You know, after that, I caddied at a golf course. My first real job, I was helping my mom with the paper route. And then I started working in restaurants. So I worked at Burger King. I worked at Subway. I was a busboy at Outback. And then my first real job was telemarketing. When I was 15, I got a job being a telemarketer. And I did that all the way through college. So in the summertime in college, I would come back, do that job, and save enough money to go back to school the next year. I still worked in school. I worked at Hungry Howie's. I was a pizza boy. Best job I've ever had. It's awesome. Oh, it was the best. I loved it, man. I really did. I enjoyed it because I worked with a lot of my fraternity brothers and friends, but I've always worked. And then right out of school, I started at Pulte Homes. I had a fraternity brother that started with them that graduated 2 years before me. And the only thing I knew is that he showed up in a brand new Cadillac CTS the next year because he was working for this company called Pulte Homes. And my thought was very simple. If Nick can do it, I can outsell that guy. Nick was a good salesperson, don't get me wrong. But he inspired me to say, because that's all I looked at, where can I get a job that I can make a lot of money? It was so money driven because I never had any. And so I got an internship at Pulte. They gave me an opportunity I was doing really well in my internship. I had an opportunity, like my last 3 weeks before I went back to college to finish my semester to graduate. During my internship, my boss was like really proud of what I was doing. I was crushed. There were 4 total interns. So there was over 1,000 applicants for an intern. They picked 4. I was one of them. So I represented Central Michigan. There was one from Western, there was one from MSU, and there was one from Oakland. And so us 4 were like, we were in it together, but we were also competing, and I was smashing them. And so my boss, Sean, came up to me and said, actually it was Sean and this guy named Jeff, who was actually Sean's boss. And they said, we're gonna move you into a community on your own. It's a sellout. We're gonna move Ron, who was one of the salespeople there. We need to get him out of there to open this community. We're gonna put you into it. There's 7 or 8 homes left to sell. And they had never done that with an intern. An intern never, ever could sell. Like, you were there to help the sales staff. Well, I was selling. And so he was like, let's put Jason over there. Maybe he can knock it out. And they made a commitment to me. They said, if you sell the remaining homes in these last 3 weeks, you do not have to interview for your full-time job. You automatically have it. That was my carrot. That was like their way of saying, he ain't gonna do it, but if you do, you don't have to worry about it. And I sold them all. And so when I sold the last house, Sean I was in St. Clair Shores. Sean came over there, I was in the community, he goes, I can't believe you did this. And I'm like, well, thank you for the opportunity. He goes, I'm gonna honor my word. And so what was nice is when I went up for my last semester to Central, I knew my job was waiting for me. My training was already outlined. So I knew I was starting training on January 14th. It was a done deal. So I just effed off my last semester, right? Like my classes, because I just needed credits. I was done with so I just needed credits to graduate at that point. I had, this was my last semester of college. I had yoga, bowling, piano, and then I had to finish my Math 216. Like that was my senior year. That was my bowling. Swear to God. I took piano with my buddy Brian Burt, and then I did yoga with my friend Jessica, who married my buddy Nate Yauk. And so but the reason that is I knew I had a badass job waiting for me because I worked my butt off. And I did. It was great. So then I started there, and training was a grind. It was about 8 months to get fully trained, and then from there, sky was the limit. I got put in some good positions, and I succeeded. I got into a Top Gun program, second year, that never was done before, and I was the #1 salesperson in units in all of Metro Detroit. So I was doing really well. I was doing well, but I was also put in a position to do really well, but I also outworked everybody. I mean, I grind. I mean, I went in and I fucking worked my ass off. And for it, I saw the success. And then I started to see the paychecks. You know, I was 22. When I came out to Arizona, the year I came out to Arizona with Pulte, that year I made over $700,000. I was 24 years old, right? Yeah. And I left. My parents are like, what are you doing? And I just wasn't feeling it. I wanted to go on my own. And I've been on my own ever since. So I've been on my own for 20 years now. I haven't had a boss since.